أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to welcome you to this special session, Trapped in the Scroll, The Brain in Social Media, taught by our guest speaker, Dr. Sana Khan. My name is Dalal, and I am your host for this event. I am a member of the U.S. IOU Sister Student Committee. I have a bachelor's in psychology, and I am currently pursuing a bachelor's in Islamic studies, alhamdulillah. We thank Allah for the opportunity to participate in this webinar hosted by the International Open University. Founded in 2007 by Dr. Bilal Phillips, IOU provides affordable and accessible online education to students around the world. IOU offers a wide range of degree and certificate programs, including Islamic Studies, Psychology, Business Administration, Information Technology, Education, Arabic, Banking and Finance, and more, alhamdulillah. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. We are truly honored to have a distinguished speaker with us today. Dr. Sana Khan holds a diverse academic background that bridges both the natural and Islamic sciences. Her academic background includes a Bachelor's of Science in Biochemistry and Life Sciences, a diploma in biotechnology, and a master's in neuroscience, focusing on neurodegeneration and regeneration. Currently, Dr. Sana Khan serves as a joint faculty in the Department of Islamic Studies and Psychology at IOU. Her research interests span Aqidah, comparative religion, Islamic psychology, religious coping mechanisms, emotional intelligence, and neuropsychology. Jazakumullahu khairan, Dr. Sana Khan, for taking the time to be here with us today. Before we delve into the topic, I would like to invite you to pause and reflect. Think back to the earliest forms of storytelling and face-to-face conversations were our foundation.
Now, social media has become an integral part of our lives, and be it the various social platforms that we have, it could be TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Snapchat. Most of us have heard of these or are already on, if not all, but some of these platforms at least. And as far as statistics are concerned, 25% of adults are online constantly. 95% of teens have access to social media, and constant use of social media has shown to rewire the brain, which creates an impulsive or compulsive pattern of checking and scrolling. Now, while the social media provides connection and entertainment, researchers are studying the long-term effects of social media on psychology and brain physiology. Now, there's something called as the phenomenon, or this particular term called as the scrolling trap. Now, social media platforms, they are engineered to keep the users hooked, as all of us, or if not all of us, but maybe some of us must have realized by now that, these platforms are, engineered in a manner, they're developed in a manner where they keep us hooked for a long period of time. And this is done through several means. The first is, one of them is infinite scrolling ensures a never-ending stream of content. Okay. So basically, that's one of the ways. Then, of course, personalized feeds, curate posts to maximize engagement. So if you must have realized, they when you look at a certain type of videos or reels, you'll see suddenly a surge in those kind of reels in your feeds. For example, if you are pregnant and you start looking at some such content, you will suddenly see an increase in pregnancy-related videos in your feed. So that is something which is very common. And I'm giving this example because it's something which I have, recently observed as well myself. Um, Also, platforms they employ variable ratio reinforcement. Now, basically, this is a type of reinforcement schedule in behavioral psychology where a response is rewarded after unpredictable number of times the behavior occurs. So basically, the reinforcement is based on the number of responses and not on time. So, the ratio again varies, so the person cannot predict when the reward will come. Now, this schedule, it creates high and steady response rates because the uncertainty keeps, the excuse me, the individual or the subject motivated to continue the behavior, and that's essentially what social media employs, and that's what it tries to do. Okay. Again, we also have, so before that, just to, yeah, I would also like to add that, the brain releases dopamine. I'm going to speak about dopamine a bit more in the future slides, inshallah. So basically, the brain releases dopamine when it anticipates rewarding content, and it keeps users scrolling in the hope of the next hit or the next interesting information or news that you might be exposed to. Now, the former designer like Asa Raskin, they have likened the social media to behavioral cocaine, warning people of its addictive nature and its addictive structure. So that's what it has been termed as. Okay. Now, persuasive design and dopamine loop. So, continuing the explanation or the elaboration of how social media really functions. Persuasive design basically it uses algorithms which analyze user behavior to create highly personalized feeds. That is something which I'm sure all of us must have experienced, and it also uses novelty of new content, keeping the brain engaged and feeding into the dopamine loop. And of course, the notifications. How can we forget that? Bright colors and sounds, the sound cues basically they act as behavioral reinforcers. So basically, notifications, as we know, are one of the greatest distractors in our times, where any ping or any alert on the phone, and then we see our eyeballs moving in the direction of the phone to see what notification has come up, so that, and most of us, we keep our notifications on so that we do not miss anything. And imagine the number of social media platforms that we use these days. I'm sure our notifications are full, literally, every few minutes or seconds, we must be having some update here or there. So that's that. Then the brain on scroll. Basically, when you look at the dopamine reward loop. So basically, what happens is if you see, there is a cyclic reaction that takes place. So you pick up your phone, you get a dopamine hit, and you feel happy about it. And then, of course, it's a fleeting moment. You feel happy, and then it passes by, and then the dopamine level drops, and then you feel sad again till the next time when you pick your phone, and perhaps you move on to some other post, which again gives you a dopamine hit, and so on. And basically, the cycle. This is like an endless cycle that goes on, and it continues forever. So dopamine reward loops, variable rewards keep us, this is what that keeps us going. We still want to check, one more post, one more scroll, just to see if if there's something new, which I don't want to miss, right? Now, attention, of course, is hijacked by novelty and social signals. And of course, the prefrontal cortex, especially when it comes to teens, it is still maturing. So the prefrontal cortex is basically involved in executive function of the brain, and that is immature. We sit through such a kind of behavior to a level compared to us. As I'm not saying the other guilt, but the brain, the teen brain, is not enough to handle or to control this kind of behavior. Now why read for approval likes match? Now, this is something a bit of nuance get into a lot of trying to this is one brain's reward system. So when we encounter something pleasurable, like receiving likes or comments, or see something very interesting on the social media, for that matter, our brain releases dopamine and creates a sensation of pleasure and satisfaction. Now, this cycle, that I spoke about, the dopamine loop, which I showed you, the previous slide, is very similar to what happens also in cases of gambling, alcohol addiction. This is the same loop that is observed. In casinos, we see players, they keep playing at the slot machines, not because they don't, because they don't know when, the next win will come. So they just go on and on and on. And basically the unpredictability keeps the brain craving for the next hit of dopamine. So social media works in the same way. The uncertainty of whether the next scroll would show something exciting or not, that particular notification would be interesting or not, or any message that would be interesting or not, keeps the users locked in an addictive loop of endless scrolling. So it is all it's all very similar to gambling and alcohol addiction as well. Now, talking about the ventral tegmental area, it plays a major role in the reward system. So when the brain perceives social success, it releases dopamine and creates feelings of happiness and satisfaction. And when it perceives social rejection, what essentially happens is it releases chemicals that make us feel sad or distressed or discomforted. So the VT also activates when we give likes to others. Studies have shown that 64% of users like posts because they find them visually appealing, and 33% do so because the content reflects something that they would post themselves. So these interactions basically, trick the brain into believing that we are having meaningful real life, interactions and social exchanges. But even though in reality, of course, these interactions and exchanges that we are having on social media is basically all online. It's not real, right? You're not meeting the person physically. You're not having that social interaction in person. You're not seeing the reaction of that person. You're not seeing the facial expression of that person who's given you a like. Perhaps that person was least, even interested in, in your post, but just, perhaps just gave you a like and went ahead. So, all these things, these social cues are completely missed. So all you see is basically a screen through which communication takes place. And, that's how, it loses the tone, the tone of the voice, the facial expression and touch. All of this is completely lost. Right. So also, there's this researcher, Laura Picott, and she has something interesting to say. She said that using social media lights up the same parts of your brain as other addictions, such as drugs, alcohol, and gambling. And that is why, this particular observation helps us to understand why individuals may feel compelled to repeatedly check their notifications or posts, as these actions become linked with pleasure and reward. Such engagement again can lead to significant alterations in brain function, again particularly in young users. Now, also another interesting part of the brain is that it undergoes a process called as neural pruning to enhance efficiency, which is accelerated by frequent social media use. So by favoring certain pathways over others, what does the brain do is it basically adapts to the habitual dopamine release elicited by social media interaction, reinforcing the reward pathways. And that's one of the reasons why social media feels very, very addictive. Okay, because the brain is pruning to make this reward pathway more and more stronger. And of course, with the pruning that takes place, there is certainly, there are drawbacks. Studies have shown that it can lead to impulsivity and difficulty in controlling emotional responses. And of course, they can also affect a young person's ability to self-regulate and make informed decisions. Because again, like I said earlier, the prefrontal cortex, which is important for making executive, which is important for the executive functioning of the brain, of course, gets is not very mature. So that also contributes to this kind of behavior, right? Now, the psychology of scrolling and mental health. So basically, dopamine surges from likes and shares. It reinforces addiction, leading to anxiety and depression, as studies have shown. And okay. And the dopamine loop basically creates an ongoing craving for validation, keeping the users glued to their screens. And over a period of time, this constant stimulation can lead to basically anxiety and depression and decreased self-worth. Now, when it comes to negative comments and emotional impact, of course, negative feedback online, we know that how much ever the person may say that it does not affect them, it does affect them. And it can be very, very devastating. We have seen cases of influencers who have kind of ended their lives because of the kind of comments that and the hate that they receive on the social media. So it's actually very, very, very impactful in a negative way, and a person may not realize where just because they're sitting behind a screen just typing something hurtful, how much that would affect the person that they are targeting. So again, it is not a very, very healthy place in a way, especially as far as mental health is concerned. Adolescents, especially, they're vulnerable because studies have shown negative comments lower self-esteem and create emotional distress. And the brain interprets rejection online like social exclusion. So because basically, like I said earlier, the brain does not distinguish between online and offline. So if there's an online rejection that is taking place, the brain perceives it as a real-time, real-life situation or in-person situation. So it basically equals it to that. And of course, it actually feels like a real-time, exclusion from the society, and of course, it triggers real panic, fear, and isolation. And the emotional pain often reduces the likelihood of reaching out for future connections, both online as well as offline. Now, switching costs and memory. So basically, every quick check that we do, oh, there's a notification to check. So you just feel that it was just harmless, just one little notification that I'm checking. What's the big deal? But of course, it costs a lot of cognitive energy. Of course, when you're multitasking, your phone is next to you and you're actually doing a work and thinking that I'm juggling between several things, and that's fine. I'm able to do that. But actually, multitasking is not a very healthy way of using your brain. Okay, and the less one multitasks, the better it is. The better the output and the focus on the work is. Okay, so also multitasking leads to weaker memory encoding, and presence of phone alone reduces working memory. As far as the sleep cycles are concerned, these are also essentially affected. The blue light, it suppresses melatonin, which leads to delayed sleep. Night scrolling reduces deep and the REM sleep, which is again very, very essential. Weaker next day mood, memory, and focus. This is what has also been observed through studies due to increased use of the phone. And of course, by the phone, I mean essentially social media. Now, the creation of online personas. This is another drawback of social media that we have seen, that people create false personas for approval. They have an entirely different image online, and the posts that they put up are also to maintain that image. In real life, they might be completely different individuals. And many times we see when the facade falls or breaks down, we see the actual personality of the person, and then it comes as a shocker that this particular person he put himself or herself across as a type of person, but then of course the reality soon comes out, and we know that this is a completely different individual altogether, and it's very difficult to trust people then. Exposure of fake identities harms self-worth and relationships, of course, especially when it also comes the example of religious scholars or people, they have a certain persona, they have a certain following, and then something happens, sadly, and we see that people start questioning the authenticity of righteous people or so-called practicing Muslims when they see such kind of behavior coming across from a practicing individual or someone who they held in high regard. So that's that. Of course, there is an academic effect as well on the academic performance. Addiction harms resilience and academics. Studies have shown a non-academic use lowers the GPA. Now, the role of FOMO is basically fear of missing out. I'm sure the Gen Z generation after that knows all of these terms better than me. But the role of so basically what FOMO is, there is this, it basically stems from the fear of exclusion or missing important events. So basically, there's this urge that, if I don't check social media, I might just miss something important, some important update, or some important thing that is happening, and I might have no clue about it. So that's one of the reasons also that people want to be online all the time and check the various media portals. Social media basically highlights the curated lives or the perfect lives of other people, and of course this triggers a feeling of inadequacy. People showing how perfect their family is, how perfect mothers they are or fathers they are, or how well they practice their Islam and things like that. Or it could be any other influencers that we have in our times, and that kind of course does affect a person, where the person starts feeling that their own lives are so inadequate, they're so imperfect. But always remember that what is shown on social media is only a part of their lives, and many a times it's just curated to show the world that how perfect their lives are. We honestly don't know what goes behind the closed doors. We don't know what kind of relationship actually those spouses have, who show or display a lot of love online. So we actually don't know all of that. So basically, it's again, it's a facade. Basically a very, very I would say a very fleeting pleasure that is basically seen and shown, and this is not something which is real. And yeah, so FOMO creates stress, loneliness, and anxiety by comparing to curated lives online. Now, signs of social media addiction. Okay, so it's important that we look for these signs within ourselves or within people around us, near dear ones, friends, family, etc., so that we can speak about this and make amendments in our lives, inshallah. So the first is excessive use, of course, compulsive checking, neglecting relationships because you're so occupied with what's happening online, and withdrawal from the surroundings and what is happening in real time with you, and basically kind of moving away from all of that and just being in this world that is limited to the screen. Now, how endless scrolling basically affects the brain and body. We've spoken about this, but very quickly, mental effects are stress, anxiety, low self-esteem. Physical effects, obesity, posture issues, sleep disturbances. Now is the Islamic compass for the digital life. The Quran, now Islam, of course, does not speak directly about social media, but it speaks in a lot of places and reminds us about various aspects which the social media abuses as far as Islam is concerned. Like in Surah Al-Asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the value of time. So as we know, I don't need to emphasize this, or this is not a very eye-opening fact that social media is seriously a waste of time. It takes away a lot of time. So of course there is good to it, but then sadly, we get influenced by a lot of bad that it has to offer. So also in the Quran and Surah Al-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to lower our gaze and guard our chastity, which again, sadly, is often compromised when social media is used often. Then, again, in in chapter 49, verse 6, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asks us to verify information before sharing. So many times we see a lot of information or rather misinformation that is shared with a lot of confidence by people and without verifying whether that statement or the fact is right or not. And many times we may also be guilty of sharing such information without verifying whether it's true or not. Also, the Prophet ﷺ said that leave that which does not concern you, and we say that social media essentially is, making ourselves concerned with what's happening in the lives of other people, and and most of the times it's the lives of those people who we've never met, who they don't even know that we exist, right? And we are interested in their lives and to know about them and to have every update about their life, whether what did they have for lunch and what did they have for dinner and where did they go out and things like that. Also, remembering the principles of wasatiyya and muraqabah, so basically having balance, being aware, taking oneself to account. Islam places a lot of emphasis on calling ourselves to account, taking account of our time, taking account of our, the faculties and the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. How well are we using them or abusing them, rather, right? Now, tips to cut back on social media use. State your purpose, so whenever you're using social media, just take a moment and just sit back and just think that why am I using it right now? Is it to look for some Islamic reminders, something to benefit from, or maybe some lecture or live lecture that I'm going to attend, or anything of that sort, or is it just mindless scrolling, that I'm going to do? Also, delete apps that are basically consuming a lot of your time or affecting your mental health, or basically making you feel ungrateful, or making you feel, sad. Making you feel worthless. So please go ahead and delete that. Avoid saved passwords in the sense if you have, it's better to log out and then try to log in again. I know it's difficult, but then this also would help us that, every time when you have to log in, it's a tedious process. So you might as well have less logins, that way. Track your time. I know, again, very, very difficult to track your time once you're on social media, but we can definitely try this. Change your routine, bring some changes, try to basically add, as I'm going to also, speak about this more in the future points. Disable non-essential notifications, set app limits, schedule office hours for social apps, keep your phone outside the bedroom if possible. Replace the reflux scroll with dhikr or Quran reading, or perhaps with something else. Talk to someone for that matter. Speak to your mother, speak to your father, speak to your siblings or a friend. Have real-time conversations and interactions with people. Use study blocks with breaks. So this is the Pomodoro style, where you basically do hardcore, intense, deep work for a certain period of time, let's say 15 minutes, and then you set a timer and you say for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to do just one focused deep work, and then I'll take a 5-minute break. And in that 5-minute break, perhaps I will check my phone or whatever. And then once the 5 minutes are over, then back to doing deep work. And that's so basically you're working in chunks and then taking breaks in between, so that you don't feel the urge or the need to check your phone every 2 minutes or every few seconds. Align deep work with salah breaks. Okay. Now, also strategies to stop endless scrolling. Track your behavior, see how what are the things that are affecting you, what are the things that you are guilty of, and then kind of work on that. Have tech-free zones in your home. Avoid nighttime scrolling. Have offline hobbies like reading, cycling, learning something new, maybe crochet, or anything that perhaps interests you. Have screen time apps that basically kind of track your screen time. Okay, I think phones also do that, and they basically inform you how many hours were you using your screen. So that also helps. Youth and family safeguards. So basically, this is tech covenant at home, have a common charging area. So this is basically safety in terms of using social media and not getting attacked by predators. And so that, so that the parents can keep a watchful eye over their children and make sure that they are not getting abused by anyone online. Also, respectful transparency and monitoring youth use, model mindful posting and online modesty, community reminders, basically tech as an amana, and don't make it a master of your lives where it's influencing everything that you do. It's basically an amana, so it's best to treat it as one and use it in the best manner possible. Now, your 7-day commitment. Pick one habit to try. For example, no phone bedroom, app cap, any of this. Pair it with one ayah or hadith for motivation. Share your reflection with a friend or family, and revisit progress after 7 days. So this is basically a little exercise that you can do, and inshallah, I hope that would benefit. And with that, I would conclude saying that social media isn't inherently bad, but mindful use and boundaries are essential. Ultimately, social media should enhance our life. It should not control it. That's something something we need to remember, inshallah. So with that, I come to an end, and Jazakallah khair kasiran for attending today's session and for being with me. Anything that is good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if I've made any mistakes or errors that are from myself, and I ask Allah to forgive me. And Jazakallah khair. If you have any questions, please write to me at sana.khan@iou.edu.gm. Inshallah, I would love to hear your queries and your questions if you have any, and I will try my best to answer them and get back to you as soon as possible. So that's Sana, SANA.KHAN Khan@iou.edu.gm. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallahu khairan for that incredible, insightful, thought-provoking. Dr. Sana Khan, you helped us understand how social media affects our brains, why it can become addictive, and most importantly, how we can approach it from an Islamic perspective. May Allah reward you for sharing your knowledge with us today, and let it be a source of benefit for those who attended. On behalf of the IOU Sister Student Committee, Jazakumullahu khairan for attending. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.